Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has said that meeting up with infrastructure deficit in Africa requires the active participation of the organized private sector, as government alone cannot meet the infrastructure needs of the continent. Professor Osinbajo, who stated this at the 10th anniversary of African Finance Corporation's meeting in Abuja, said the overdependence on the government in Africa is one of the reasons infrastructure development is foot dragging.
The coming years may well call for a different mindset and a more nuanced skill set. So the times certainly call for new thinking. AFC and DFIs like that must now begin to look for new ways of engaging with governments. We must look for new ways of engaging with African governments, given the difficulties and problems that are now clearly the case. Our own economies, for African economies indeed, will be relying on the AFCs, especially our own DFIs, to do much more. We'll be relying on them to show much more leadership and to take greater risks. There's no question at all that all of what we require, all of what is needed, will not be provided just by governments. As a matter of fact, it is very clear that governments cannot finance the huge infrastructure needs of most countries. As a matter of fact, without the private sector, it's completely impossible for governments to even finance current infrastructure needs. So there's no question at all that governments simply cannot compare with the power of the private sector and with the resources that the private sector can pull together. And it's the AFCs that can bring the private sector, de-risk government to a certain extent, and bring the private sector and public sector together to deliver on the kinds of infrastructure needs that our country requires.
Giving a brief history of the origin of AFC, Osinbajo said, it's a good thing that an idea like that is in operation at this time.
It struck me that just as it is always the case, the greatest ideas, the best ideas, those ideas that become this sort that we celebrate today, never really seem anywhere near what they turn out to be. They are just a seed. And if that seed is planted, if it ever gets done, then there's a good chance that they can become what it is today. Many of the best seeds never get planted. But we're happy and we're glad that this particular seed got planted. But the AFC story is also the story of a core of solid African professionals whose courage and faith in leaving the safety and certainty of institutions where they had established firm reputations for themselves and left that for the unknown world of the startup multilateral DFI, has formed an ethos that today defines that corporation, an ethos that has quickly built up such trust and confidence that it has in these few years initiated, led, participated in, and offered project finance and management services to some of the most significant infrastructure projects in Africa. But uncertain and turbulent as the last decade was for Africa, and indeed for world economies, it appears inevitable that the next decade will be even rockier. Indeed, it will seem that the only certainty in the future is the uncertainty. But the student of history and social phenomena must recognize that such a milieu is the precursor of some of the most phenomenal opportunities for prosperity and growth that we have seen thus far.
Nigerian Minister of Finance, Ms. Kemi Adeosun, and the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, also advocated the need for synergy among African nations.
When this administration came into office, we inherited a situation where only 10% of budgetary spend was on capital and 90% was recurrent. And that was really making our infrastructure deficit, it was widening the infrastructure deficit. And so the first thing we had to do was to ensure that government itself spends at least 30% of its budget on infrastructure, and that we've achieved. And we released about 1.2 trillion in the last 12 months on capital. Now, we recognise the size, we've dimensioned the size of the problem, and the size of the problem is such that government on its own cannot, even if we devoted all of our budget to infrastructure for the next 10 years, we can't bridge the gap. So we need to do two things. One, we need to continue to signal. I think it's very important for government to signal. There's been great arguments around what's the role of the private sector. The role of the private sector is to come in and do the areas that are viable. But there are public goods that are not necessarily viable, and that's the responsibility of government, and we mustn't shirk it. So government will continue to be the provider of infrastructure.
At a time when we are facing the kind of commodity shocks, you will find that taking foreign currency facilities to fund obligations domestically create some form of credit risk, particularly if those revenues that you are expecting are going to be domestically denominated, and you find that when there are shocks, naturally you find weaknesses in the ability of the obligor to be able to repay the facility. So that means that in a changing world like we are right now, there is a need for institutions, and here, whether you talk about the central bank, you talk about the commercial banks, you talk about the development finance institutions, there is a need for us to think about how do we structure domestically denominated facilities where currency shocks do not really impact on repayment and the performance of those facilities.
The African Finance Corporation is a conglomerate of finance experts with the intention of bankrolling projects across the continent, and the 10th anniversary of the corporation is aimed at actualizing the dream of lifting Africa from infrastructure deficits. From Abuja, I am Festus Ejiroge Nefife for Ben Television.
The Senate President Bukola Saraki has faulted the anti-corruption campaign of the current administration, saying it has not yielded much success because the process is riddled with sensationalism. Saraki, who gave this position in Abuja at the launch of Antidote for Corruption, The Nigerian Story, a book authored by Senator Dino Melai, representing Kogi West. The Senate President advised that the fight against corruption should be focused on deterrence. He noted that there's need to review the anti-corruption approach by building institutions to make it difficult for people to carry out corruption practices.
It is my view that we must fight corruption with sincerity. We must aim to go to the root of the problem and not go to the issue of symptoms. It is key that we fight against and strengthen our institutions. We should not base it on individuals, because as we always say, people who are corrupt are patient. They can wait 4 years, they can wait 8 years, they can wait 12 years. And that is why it cannot be based on individuals. We must strengthen those institutions, and we must ensure that we do our best. And those to do this rise in cooperation between our arm of government and the executive. The other area of importance is that we must make basic areas available to our people. Basic education, secondary, basic health care, and basic food and shelter. It is not surprising that it is the countries where they have these basic needs that you tend to find that corruption is less.
In a similar development, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, also advocated for a preventive approach in fighting corruption. He advised that the fight against corruption should be the moral responsibility of all Nigerians because it affects everybody.
If we must make progress, our focus should be to replace the old order that was corrupt with a new order that makes corruption near impossible to take place. The reason I say this, as someone rightly put it somewhere, if you're not careful, you will end up punishing corruption, but not fighting corruption. Corruption, for those who are farmers, is like a tree that grows vigorously. So if you end up just pruning the trees and not attacking the roots, there's no way you will deal with that thing. So when those who celebrate the successes of the fight against corruption in terms of high-profile arrest, high-profile investigation, high-profile prosecution, and even detention, they are missing the point, because that is dealing with the symptoms of corruption. That is punishing corruption.
The book was eventually launched by dignitaries, including some government officials, traditional rulers, surprisingly, former First Lady, the impatient Goodluck Jonathan, who was ill as she walked in. From Abuja, Muiwa Bamdele reporting.
Federal government has directed the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, to investigate some contractors handling its intervention projects in some tertiary institutions. Executive Secretary, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TED Fund, Abdullahi Bafa, made this known at a press conference in Abuja. Abdullahi, who vowed to recover every fund allocated for projects not utilized in tertiary institutions, said TED Fund would blacklist defaulted contractors.
We didn't just ask the institutions to blacklist the contractors, but also to send their names to us, so that we are going to share their names on our listserv of all beneficiary institutions, so that no institution should also accept to give such defaulting contractors TED Fund projects. That is two. But three, we have also already started involving the law enforcement agencies. There are institutions that we have advised, some we have directed that they should report certain contractors to EFCC or ICPC. And quite a number of them have complied, written to us, copying us, writing to EFCC or ICPC. Some have already started visiting the agency. Some have already agreed on period within which the defaulting contractors have agreed under the influence of ICPC, within which the abandoned project must be completed. And we are happy about this. What we want is, we will want our projects to be completed. We will want public fund allocated to these institutions, disbursed by this fund, to be utilized judiciously. Where any penny is diverted, we are not going to rest on our oars. We are going to follow it and recover it. And that we will assure the Nigerian public that we are not going to allow a single kobo from TED Fund to get missing.
He noted that the fund in the last 5 years has disbursed about 1 trillion naira as intervention fund to public institutions, out of which over 175 billion naira has not been accessed by some benefiting institutions as a result of several encumbrances.
Total unaccessed, including ongoing, for which beneficiary institutions have started drawing, but have not finished, have not closed the intervention. When I came, that figure stood at about 175 billion naira for polytechnics, colleges of education, and universities. But in the last 9 months, more than half of that amount have been accessed. More than half of that amount have been accessed by beneficiary institutions. And we are hoping that after this access clinic, the remaining half, within the timeline we have agreed, will also be cleared by beneficiary institutions. Like I have told each beneficiary institution that we at the fund do not want any penny allocated to any beneficiary institution to be staying at the fund. We want the money to be disbursed to the front line and to be used for the purposes intended. And that is why we conducted the access clinic. And that is why we said we are going to institutionalize the access clinic.
In Abuja, LM Chukwemeka reports.
Hi, Hi, Mike.
Babe, it's been over 12 hours. Are you done thinking about it? Is he yes?
Convince me.
I know how much confidence that'll mean to you. Let me take you somewhere.
What's that?
A superior leading international hospitality chain in the heart of Africa.
And?
They offer very distinct services. Their meeting halls and all their hotels offer conference solutions that can help plan a perfect function for any occasion. They feature outdoor catering and provide services for any size event.
Keep going. You got me thinking now.
The beauty, the decor, and the views. It's the hotel experience you always dreamed of. They have up-to-date entertainment and a variety served at the fast food restaurant and snack bar. Oh, and don't even get me started on the garden bar or the nightclub. You would have everything you need within your reach without having to go out.
Wow. So what if I want to...
Cook? They got you, babe. The rooms are thoughtfully furnished with facilities that aid proper cooking, just like you would at home.
Where is this place?
And it's Sweets.
Wow.
So, will you marry me?
Yes. How can I refuse?
Not at Sweets, a colorful affair.
The Nigerian Senate has summoned Transport Minister Rotimi Amechi to appear before the Appropriation Committee of the Senate to explain the reason why the exclusion of the Eastern Corridor Rail line in the request for approval of the federal government in 2016 to 2018 National Borrowing Plan. This followed a motion by Senator Inaya Abaribe, who raised concern about the complete exclusion of eastern section that link the four zone south-south, southeast, north-central and north-east with other key cities such as Port Harcourt, Aba, Enugu, Makurdi among others, describing it as inexplainable. It will be recalled that the federal government is asking the National Assembly for an approval for a loan of $5.851 from Shana Exim Bank to execute the modernization of Lagos Kano Kaduna, Lagos Ibadan, and Lagos Calabar segment. Senator Abaribe, through the motion, urged the Senate to suspend the consideration of the loan request on the correction of the apparent oversight of the eastern part of the country. However, this prayer was not granted by the Senate, following an explanation from the President of the Senate, Bukola Saraki, and Senator Gbenga Shafa that the leadership of the Senate is already addressing the issue.
As I said, this matter is now before one of our committees. So the committee that we have must take the spirit of the views of his colleagues. So by the time they bring their report, if it's not in line with our spirit of it, we will send it back or amend accordingly. I don't see what the minister is coming here to tell us.
I agree that all the areas covered by the entity called Nigeria must be covered by this infrastructure because it is the money of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But government is a continuum. Yes, government is a continuum. The master plan is on ground. The master plan is on ground. The federal government of this administration has pledged and has promised Nigerians that all sectors will be covered by the rail project that we have. On this note, Mr. President, I want to urge my colleagues to look at this dispassionately and not stoke this particular project. Nigerians are watching us. The loans must be secured, the loans must be approved, and all other things will follow.
An effort by Senator Abaribe to have the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, appear before the Senate plenary does not see the light of the day, as the Senate conclude to have him appear before the committee already handling the matter.
The Senate therefore concerned that the complete exclusion of the eastern section that links the four zones of the south-south, southeast, north-central, and northeast, and the key cities such as Port Harcourt, Aba, Enugu, Makurdi, Lafia, Gudi, Jos, Bauchi, and Maiduguri is inexplicable. Accordingly, Senate wishes to resolve to urge that the Senate suspend consideration of the loan request until the correction of this apparent oversight of the eastern section and parts of the country.
From National Assembly Complex, Abuja, Uyo Bamdele reporting.
Registrar, Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, Professor Isaac Oloyede, has advised candidates writing 2017 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination not to patronize fraudsters claiming to have JAMB questions just to make money from them. Oloyede, who gave the advice during a tour of examination centers in Abuja with the Minister of State for Education, Professor Anthony Anwuka, said no cutting of corners will work with JAMB this year.
Even this morning, somebody sent me a question. Or they call it Origi, and he bought it for 200,000. And when I saw it was our question in 1984, and he just put 2017 on it, and he started selling it, and people were buying. So if people are corrupt, I won't have any sympathy if they are extorted by corrupt people like themselves. So it had just been wise. They went into past question of JAMB and just changed the heading to 2017. Somebody sent text to me and said, I have all your questions, send them to me. And I checked, I just laughed because none of that was on our question. So what people are just doing is that they are making money because people are gullible. We appeal to people, please, let's do everything according to the rule. No cutting of corner will work with JAMB. So it will not work. And that's why many of them are disappointed.
JAMB Registrar noted that foreign students are expected to begin their exams immediately it finishes with the Nigerian students.
We will be finishing in some states today. Some states will continue till Thursday, some Friday. But by Friday, we should be over and then we will face the foreign students.
Minister of State for Education, Professor Anthony Onwuka, who monitored the exam, gave his assessment.
The exercise is going on well, and if you can factor into what we're doing today, I think it will be excellent from now on. They should do their best. They should not cheat. Of course, they can't cheat.
Yes.
Thank you. Things are working on well.
Thank you very much.
All right?
About 1.7 million candidates applied for 2017 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination in Abuja. LM Chukwamika reports.
Nigeria's consumer price index dropped by 17.24% in April from 17.26% recorded in March. This is according to the National Bureau of Statistics report. The consumer price index, which measures inflation, increased by 17.24% year-on-year, was at a slower pace in April 2017. The Bureau in the report stated that the 0.02 percentage point in inflation rate make it the third consecutive month of decline in the headline consumer price index rate. The report indicated that the high food and non-food prices as well as the unfavorable base effects of the 2016 prices have started easing.